bisa naik ya.
Wah, memang nggak bisa.
Emang udah
rendah sekali ya.
Hah?
Oke, kita berdiri aja.
Berdiri saja.
Ya.
Oke.
You will be very tight.
Berdiri aja. Terlalu rendah itu.
These are designs for Europeans.
Okay, test. Shall we start, Excellencies, Bu Nur Rafida? So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is really good afternoon for ASEAN plus 3 as well, meeting in Bali, and also with many significant high-level seminars as well. And today and yesterday, actually, including, we've had in particular 2 high-level seminars on transition finance, on the ASEAN Taxonomy Board result of revising the taxonomy now to include transition finance in the taxonomy. So these are really a good week for ASEAN, especially in the agenda of climate change and also climate change finance. We are so fortunate today. We are graced by the presence of Bu Menteri Sri Mulyani Indrawati and also Pak Ketua OJK Bapak Mahendra Siregar. Thank you very much for attending. And also, last but not least, Ibu Nur Rafida, Chair of ASEAN Taxonomy Board. She's been leading the hard work of ASEAN in revising and always improving the taxonomy of ASEAN. Without further ado, I will ask a short intervention by Bu Menteri Keuangan and then later by Pak Mahendra and also Bu Nur Rafida. Bu Menteri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pak Febrio. Good evening to all of you. We have in this Bali for 2 days, which is mainly providing quite a lot of opportunity for many decision maker, business, as well as policy maker to discuss about one of very important topic, that is sustainable finance. The series of seminar symposium, which is taken place in the past 2 days, is actually highlighted how important this financing for the climate change has become one of the most important aspects that need to be continued addressed. On the one hand, we have the commitment of the ASEAN country, which is very important. They are all committed to have the net zero emission and as well as their national determined contribution. And in terms of translating this into action, that's definitely require resources or financing. For Indonesia, we also working very hard in translating our national determined contribution into action. Indonesia government has already also enhanced our NDC from 29 to 32.1%, which is one of the most important with our own effort, and then from 42% to 43.8% with the global support. And in implementing this NDC, one very important aspect is energy transition. And for Indonesia, this is even more important because Indonesia also have a fossil fuel energy, both the resources like oil, gas, or even coal, while at the same time Indonesia also have very rich resources related to the renewable energy, whether geothermal, hydro, or even wind and solar. And that's why for Indonesia to translate our transition toward this green energy is very important, not only just putting in a number, but how we are going to work on it. Now, with this kind of discussion, we are now identifying how to retire coal and also to build more renewable energy. In order for us to be able to translate this into action, financing is very important. And I'm glad that today I'm with Pak Mahendra, which is from the OJK, Financial Sector Authority, which is also providing an outline of how the Indonesia own taxonomy in order for us to be able to mobilize many financing from the private sector, especially for this sustainable finance and especially also for the energy transition mechanism, whether retiring coal as well as for building the new renewable energy. As we are all recognize, the trickiest part is retiring coal will require financing. And many of the financial institutions usually treat this coal financing as the dirty financing, and that's why they are not willing to finance that. The Indonesia own taxonomy, and now within the context of the ASEAN taxonomy, which is just released the second version, version 2, has already accommodated the need for this energy transition for a country like Indonesia, which is not only just building new renewable energy, but also how you are going to retire more of your power plant, which is based on coal. So this is a real progress. I'm sure that the two authorities to my left and to the right is going to explain about this taxonomy. But what I'm seeing here is that a lot of goodwill, whether this is from the international, whether this is coming from the regional like ASEAN, as well as within the Indonesia, to really implement this commitment to avoid the climate change disaster. And now we are working in a very more detail on the principle that can be accepted by all stakeholders within the ecosystem of financing climate change. And that is a very powerful one. I'm glad that Indonesia and ASEAN in this case making a real concrete progress. And my understanding that ASEAN taxonomy version 2 may be the first in the world which recognize the financing for the energy transition through their category of green and amber, which is, I think, it's provide a very clarity on the classification or category and then how to measure it. And most importantly, it will provide certainty for the financial sector to then look this project that can be considered in terms of their financing support. So this is going to be one of the very important achievements within this ASEAN Finance and Central Bank Governor meeting, which hosted by Indonesia. As you all know that this meeting on the ASEAN Finance Minister as well as Central Bank Governor, we take the theme as the Indonesia chairing it, the ASEAN, the epicentrum of growth, and we will continue make sure that the ASEAN will continue to have a collaboration to maintain the momentum of growth within the ASEAN, and most importantly, while we are growing and developing and continue creating a progress, we also at the same time addressing the issue of climate change without creating more carbon emission and worsening the climate change risk. So these are all the most important point or progress which is being made within this series of meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. Pak Mahendra, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fabio. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good day. Minister, if I can continue for what the Minister has touched on the ASEAN theme of this year meeting, if I can suggest the sub-theme for this session of the Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governor meeting would be ASEAN Walk the Talk on Sustainable Finance. I think that would be the right sub-theme of what we are doing, not only this week, but what we have achieved leading to this week and what we have now delivered. With that in mind, of course, we highly appreciate the joint efforts of all ASEAN member states and the ASEAN Taxonomy Board in successfully published ASEAN Taxonomy for Sustainable Finance version 2. The multi-tiered science-based framework in ASEAN Taxonomy is intended to facilitate transition of ASEAN member states, balancing out inclusivity while recognizing the diversity in economic development, financial sector, and infrastructure maturity. We can see now that ASEAN taxonomy recognizes efforts to early retirement of coal-fired power plants, as well as phasing out. And that has, as being mentioned by the minister, has become the first for regional taxonomy that considers how and where coal power plant can be phased out and play a significant role in decarbonization in support of the Paris Agreement goals, providing a powerful tool for transition when approached correctly. In our role as the principal representative of Indonesia in the ASEAN Taxonomy Board, OJK, the Indonesian FSA, had actively voiced its stance on the importance of support for a gradual energy transition, particularly related to the coal phase-out, to ensure that the social and economic progress of ASEAN is not undermined. Furthermore, OJK, with the Ministry of Finance, have been in coordinating all the relevant ministries and agencies in Indonesia in providing feedbacks from Indonesian perspective in all ASEAN Taxonomy Board meetings. And on that note, I could also gladly report to you that as a result of this development, I have received a lot of various regional and international banks and financial institutions' willingness and readiness to support financing fossil fuel projects in relation to its early retirement and phase-out programs. This is also very much in line with Indonesia's plan to activate carbon trading exchange in the second half of this year. All regulatory, technical, and market-related preparations are in good progress to see that exchange activation will be materialized on time in the second half of this year. As potentially the largest country that could contribute to the world's carbon saving undertaking, Indonesia is committed to do its utmost to see it is taken place very soon. It's really time to walk the talk. The taxonomy version 2 particularly highlights the importance of social aspects in the framework. In the journey of our net zero emission commitment, it is essential to balance out the environmental with economic and social aspects, as reflected in the importance of adhering and achieving to the UN Sustainable Development Goals 2030. The issuance of the taxonomy version 2 is a significant achievement for ASEAN's development of sustainable finance. And with that progress, we invite all member states to support this taxonomy version 2 and refer it in the development and updating of their own national taxonomies. This taxonomy is expected to attract a lot of local and international investments to ASEAN in order to support sustainable development in the region. This is one of Indonesia's ASEAN chairmanship priorities that we can say that we have achieved and ready to implement. Indonesia and ASEAN need to lead by example in how to translate commitments and statements on sustainable finance and climate into real actions, real projects, real benefit to the people, environment, and business. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Chair of the ASEAN Taxonomy Board, Ibu Nurafida Sulaiman, please.
Thank you, Pak Fabrios. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon, a very good evening to esteemed members of the media. So firstly, I would like to congratulate the Minister of Finance Indonesia, Minister Ibu Sri Mulyani, for the successful completion of the seminar for the past 2 days with a team of finance financing transition in ASEAN. So it's very encouraging that the financial institution, multilaterals, and government leadership at the highest level are aligned in promoting the transition to sustainability, especially in the energy sector. So certainly challenges has been identified over the past 2 days in charting transition pathway of the region and attracting financing to the relevant activities. But nevertheless, the fruitful discussion, also led by Ibu Sri Mulyani earlier on with the fireside chat, has actually, broadened, our understanding with regards to the challenges and how the ASEAN Taxonomy Board will sort of like chart the way for the ASEAN member state to transition into a better, greener activities. So again, as I said, it has been very useful for the groups of speakers and participants, has surely generated useful ideas for us that may spark possible solution for the next phase of our ASEAN Taxonomy Board initiative. So this event has been very invaluable forum for the ASEAN Taxonomy Board to kickstart our engagement and socialization process for the ASEAN Taxonomy for Sustainable Finance version 2. And we would like to thank once again, the Ministry of Finance Indonesia for this golden opportunity. So we will continue our outreach effort, which comprise of the roundtable and events such as this, as well as stakeholders consultation, so that we will gather more feedback to enhance our report that we have actually published just on Monday, called the ASEAN Taxonomy for Sustainable Finance version 2. So Alhamdulillah, since the version 2 has been published, we have already noted a lot of positive comments in the media regarding certain unique features of the taxonomy. For example, the coal phase-out was acknowledged as addressing the need for a just transition as developing countries make efforts to reduce the dependency on coal as their energy sources. So in the coming month, the ASEAN Taxonomy Board will conduct stakeholders consultation to seek feedback, validation, also, as I said, to refine what has been published in our version 2 and develop the technical screening criteria for the remaining 5 focus sectors. I think for those who's not aware, so there are 6 focus sectors within our framework, and so we will be completing that within the next few years. So I thank you again to our honorable ministers. So very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Bu Menteri Sri Mulyani mentioned sustainability is a complicated agenda, but we need to remain strong collaboration and cooperation. ASEAN is pleased to lead the global pathway in defining a just and affordable transition. Mr. Chairman, Pak Mahendra mentioned the importance of concerted effort toward a greener economy. ASEAN matters by showing leadership with the progress made on sustainable finance agenda in the region. Bu Nur Afida shared the importance of the released ASEAN Taxonomy for Sustainable Finance version 2 as an overarching guide taxonomy, laying ground for interoperability with existing and upcoming taxonomy within and outside ASEAN as well. With that, we will open the floor. We will open for the first 3 questions from the media. Please state your name and the name of your media, please. The lady in front, 1, and 2, the gentleman, and also the lady next to the gentleman. Go ahead. State your name and your media, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Natasha from Liputanam.com. Since we all got the news already about Timor-Leste joining ASEAN, has there been conversations with the Timor-Leste counterpart about cooperation, especially about energy transition and sustainable economy, which has been part of the discussion these past 2 days? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the updates. That's it for me. Thank you so much.
Do you have a specific person you would like to address the question to, or everybody? Everybody. Okay. Next, gentleman, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Stefano from Reuters. I want to ask maybe to all the speakers, how will this Asian taxonomy will help to bring investment, especially from outside the ASEAN, into the ASEAN countries? Because as we know, in Indonesian taxonomy itself, we already recognize the energy transition, but if this is meant to be only attracting investment from the Asian countries or for other countries as well outside ASEAN, because as in the seminars before, Sri Mulyani also mentioned that the homework after this will be to make sure this ASEAN taxonomy also recognized by international institutions. And Pak Mahendra also mentioned that after this taxonomy is launched, you have received many, I think, interest or commitment to invest in the energy transition. Can you share maybe possibly the details, maybe just the amounts, the range of amount that you have received? Thank you.
Thank you. So that was the first two questions. Next, the lady.
Good afternoon. I'm Claire from Bloomberg. For Minister Sri Mulyani, I wanted to ask if you already have any plans for green or sustainability bonds or sukuk this year for your transition goals, and how do you plan to manage the higher interest rates that you mentioned as one of the risks this year? Thank you.
Okay, so we have first question about the dynamic of the discussion and the potential investors, and also very specific question about sustainability-linked bonds. Bu Menteri, would you like to take the floor first, or Pak Mahendra first? Pak Mahendra.
Thank you. I'll answer the second question first on the potential investment from outside the region as well as within the region. It's very clear that financial institutions, let it be banks or other financial services companies, as well as the capital markets and all other instruments, are really waiting for what would be the applicable and acceptable framework that ASEAN as a region, as well as individual member states, would implement in their territory. And the launching of the taxonomy version 2, coupled with respective members' taxonomies or frameworks, are certainly the standards that would influence the regulatory and the supervisory aspects of these companies in their practices. So, with the clearance of that being already published, then companies, whether they are originally ASEAN-based countries, companies, or international companies or foreign-owned companies, would play according to the regulation, to the legal frameworks that would be applied in the region and individual country. With that in mind, I have had very interesting communication with several Indonesian, ASEAN-based, as well as European, American-based financial companies that are now very keen to really participate in ASEAN projects with regard to sustainable financing. And within that interest, the attention toward the early retirement and coal power plant phase out is certainly one of the main interests. And they are now very clear what are the rules and the frameworks effective in this region. So they are very willing to do so. Maybe I don't at the moment like to mention particular names or amounts that we have been indicated by these companies, but if you look at Indonesia's list of projects that our energy companies are already published and inform publicly the priority projects that they want to undertake, I think that would be a good indication of the size of the projects, and with that, of course, the amount of investment. But now, I'm very happy to say that the issue that has been questioned or challenged or discussed globally in a way, as we have seen this week, is answered by the unity and commitment of ASEAN in deciding what is best with regard to our own taxonomy. And that would certainly play a big role in other parts of the world's efforts or similar process in looking toward the same answer to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Mahendra. Madam Minister, would you like to address the questions?
Thank you very much. First, on the mobilization of finance within and outside the ASEAN, Indonesia is actually working very closely with many partners. So our energy transition mechanism country platform, which is already launched during the COP26 in Glasgow, and now working and making a lot of progress, and it's been announced during the G20 leaders meeting, attracting a lot of financing even outside the ASEAN in this case, because we understand that within the Indonesia own, there is also a need to attract more financing. First, of course, with the ADB, but we also, as I mentioned earlier, that we are working closely with the JETP and then the Green Climate Fund, and also even the G-Funds. We also have the philanthropic, which is working and blending those financing into one which is workable within the context of energy transition mechanism. So within that context, the question regarding whether the taxonomy of Indonesia and ASEAN, and also our own effort to work closely and collaboratively with many of the financial sector, financial institution, whether this is ADB, World Bank, as well as bilateral and also private sector and philanthropic, is actually providing a very good example. And that's why we are engaged with this taxonomy in order for them not to be punished, quote unquote, within this regulatory framework when they engage with Indonesia in financing the ETM. So it's really work back and forth between our own effort to continue developing the platform, participation from the global community, both private, multilateral, bilateral, philanthropic, and also with regulatory, which is being developed by the ASEAN taxonomy as well as OJK. On the second, the question regarding the Bloomberg on the sustainable bonds, we are entering 2023, of course, with recognizing that the inflation and the interest rate increase very steep. And that's why financing strategy for Indonesia will continue to be very opportunistic and pragmatic. We issued the sustainable bonds back in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And that was when we get the cheapest rate in the Europe especially. At that time, of course, we are all understand that the interest rate is still very low. And that's the strategy that we continue developing, that every time we see the opportunity, we are going to be very opportunistic, and the window of opportunity for us to issue the bonds will considering this kind of situation. For 2023, we've already also developed a scenario of financing, both from domestic and global. So these particular bonds, like sustainable bonds, certainly within the context of the whole financing, is one of the tools, but we are going to look at the market situation and the development, and then look at our own cash flow, which is at this very moment quite a huge buffer that we are still continue enjoying, both from the 2022 budget outturn as well as today. On the first question about Timor-Leste, I haven't actually discussed on that within these 2 days. We are going to consult with, of course, Minister of Foreign Affairs and others, how we are going to continue supporting the Timor-Leste within or as an observer in the ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Bu Nurafida.
Probably, Pak and Ibu, I will just take one of the questions with regards to the credibility of the ASEAN Taxonomy Board. Let me reiterate that the ASEAN Taxonomy Board is the overarching guide and also a common language to assist the ASEAN member state in their sustainability journey by identifying and classifying sustainable projects and also economic activities in ASEAN. So what that means when we say common language, so the ASEAN taxonomy provide a regional voice that will be heard clearly by the international community. So it consolidates effort by the ASEAN central banks, the capital market regulation, insurance regulator, and also financial agency that ensure that there will be an integrated and holistic sustainable finance ecosystem. So this will provide consistency and also credibility and secure global acceptance of our ASEAN taxonomy and our path to making more ASEAN to be more greener with a green economy. So I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the time for us for the press conference. Hope you enjoy Bali and see you around. Thank you very much.